Good morning. Welcome to Lavras Gold's first webinar. My name is Anne-Marie Brissenden, and I am the Head of Investor Relations for Lavras Gold Corp. Joining us this morning are Mike DeRose, our President and CEO, and Hemdat Shah, our Chief Financial Officer. Please note that we will make forward-looking statements and may refer to non-IFRS measures during this webcast. For full details, please refer to our information circular, which is available under our profile on SEDAR. All dollar amounts are in Canadian dollars unless noted. We are also recording this webcast, and the recording will be posted to our website. You are most welcome to put questions in the chat function of the platform, and we will answer them during our Q&A session. And with that, I'd now like to turn it over to Mike.
Well, thank you very much, Anne-Marie, and thank you everybody for joining us on our inaugural webinar. Thank you for your time. We think we have a great story to tell, and I'll just get right into it. Lavras was spun out of a company called Rio Gold at the end of March of this year. Rio was sold to Hochschild's Mining, and during the spin out, we created Lavras. We started the company with $10 million in cash, a 2% net smelter return royalty on the Mara Rosa exploration ground. And of course, we have our Lavras exploration property in southern Brazil, which consists of 23 known gold targets that we know of so far. We announced our first million-ounce milestone yesterday with the announcement of our Cerrito Gold project, which has about 500,000 ounces of gold. And we have a great team led by a group of technical professionals with backgrounds in geology and mining engineering, as well as finance and capital markets. And as I indicated earlier, we are well funded to meet our short-term goals. In terms of our leadership team, I was given the role of president and CEO earlier this year. My background is in geology and mineral economics. I also have a graduate diploma in environmental engineering. So three sort of silos that I think are ideally suited to unlock value for Lavras. I worked as a mining analyst in Toronto for almost 25 years and have worked with some of the largest investment banks in the area. Before joining capital markets, I worked as an exploration geologist. Our chairman is Rolly Uloth. He is the president and co-founder of Rosedale Transport. He was also previously president and CEO of Wesdome Gold from the mid-2000s until 2016. We appointed Paulo Serpa as our Brazilian country manager. Paulo is a mining engineer with an MBA. He has some really good experience working for Yamana, as well as a French multinational company with an expertise in permitting in Brazil, which will become very important for our company in the future. We also have Hemdat Shah, who's our Chief Financial Officer. He was previously CFO at Rio Gold, Wesdome, and Scorpio Mining, among others. He was also an auditor of mining companies, where he worked for 16 years with Grant Thornton, LLP. On the investor relations front, we have Anne-Marie Brissenden. She's a 25-year veteran of the mining industry. She previously led the investor relations program at Rio Gold, Dalradian, North American Palladium, and Exelon. And she is certified professional investor relations with a BA in English literature, and therefore a very good communicator. Our board of directors consists of a number of technical and financial people. David Lang and Mike Muchler are mining engineers. David Burkett, Larry Lepard, and Rusty Rakoff are financial professionals. In terms of the capital structure of Lavras Gold, we announced a few weeks ago that we're doing a 10-for-1 share consolidation, which should take effect on June 9th in a couple of days. When that happens, we'll have 41.1 million shares outstanding. We started the company with $10 million in cash. And again, we have this 2% net smelter return royalty on our Mara Rosa exploration ground. What's significant about our shareholdings is that about a quarter of the company is held by insiders, management, and the board. This means that our interests are aligned with all stakeholders. So we really want to see this company be successful. And if it is, we're all going to benefit. Eric Sprott is another pillar of our shareholder base. He owns just under 18% of the company. We have other institutions at about a third of the company, and then retail, which gives us good liquidity at about 31%. In terms of Lavras do Sul itself, the project is located in southern Brazil in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. It's about a 4.5-hour drive by road from Porto Alegre, which is a major city of about 2 million people. There's tarmac roads, power, water, etc., all the infrastructure that you want to see for any kind of emerging gold project. We have about 22,000 hectares of exploration ground, and we have historical workings, 23 historical workings that we know about that actually date back to the 1700s with the old Portuguese gold miners. In terms of the geological setting of Lavras, we believe we're dealing with an intrusive hosted alkaline gold system with both epithermal and porphyry type characteristics. On the right-hand side of this slide, I've just outlined some of the key elements that we're looking for to provide evidence that we in fact do have an alkaline system. This is obviously a kind of a work in progress, a kind of an emerging thesis, if you like, in terms of our understanding of the gold deposits and the gold system here at Lavras, but we do believe it has some alkaline affinity. So why is this important? Well, primarily because we know that alkaline gold systems can be very large and they can be very high grade. In this slide, I've just outlined 3 examples of alkaline systems, one being Cripple Creek in Colorado, which is 25.6 million ounces, Golden Sunlight in Montana, 3.4 million ounces, and Porphyry in Papua New Guinea, which is, again, 26 million ounces. Of note is the bars that you see in these diagrams. Let me just get the drawing tool out here. You can see that we've got these very large scale gold systems associated with these deposits. So for scale, this is 2 kilometers. These things can be in the range of 3 or 4 kilometers in size in terms of where you find the gold systems. Same thing at Golden Sunlight, similar sort of situation at Porphyry. When we look at Lavras, this is a map just showing the sort of geological setting, if you like. What we have is a very large circular feature. This is the intrusion. If you were sitting in a helicopter, basically, it would be the old magma chamber of a volcanic complex. This measures about 10 kilometers in diameter. All of these little names here are all the gold showings that we know about so far. You can see that we've got these circular features, these ring fractures, and then we've got these cross-cutting structures or faults throughout the intrusion. These things are very important in terms of the geological setting of this deposit because it's the intersection of these structures that provide the channelways for the fluids to ultimately form the deposits. So we're very excited by what we see. And really the key takeaway is that this is a very large gold system. It's very unusual to see this sort of a setting in one junior mining company. Just moving forward, this just shows gold and soil anomalies. What I've done is just tried to show the areas where we're seeing elevated gold values in soils. And again, each of these squares is 2 kilometers. And so it just shows you that we have something like 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers of gold showings throughout this intrusion. We currently have 1 million ounces of gold in resource. That's in 2 of these 23 deposits. The first one called Butia, and then the second one that we announced yesterday at Cerrito. We also have a 12,000 meter diamond drill program underway with 2 drills where we're targeting a number of promising and prospective deposits. One called Matilde Extension, Zeca Souza, and we may try and also get into another one called Candelaria. I'll go into more detail in the presentation. Okay, talking about Butia. Just to give you some orientation here, the town of Lavras do Sul is here in the middle, this red sort of stippled mark. Butia is about 3.5 to 4 kilometers southwest of the town. This is our most advanced project, and again, it hosts about 500,000 ounces of gold. This is the block model, basically shows the measured, indicated, and inferred categories. We've completed just over 20,000 meters at Butia in 78 drill holes. The mineralization, importantly, starts at surface, and we've confirmed the mineralization down to a depth of about 250 meters. The deposit remains open, both along strike and at depth. And these are structurally controlled gold systems where we find the gold hosted within these altered granites. In terms of the actual resource, we've got about 500,000 ounces. It grades about 0.9 grams per ton, using a 0.3 gram per ton cutoff. And we use a capping grade of 5.6 grams per ton on this to make sure that we're being conservative in the estimate. I think that with more drilling, we can probably improve upon these numbers, but you know, these are certainly reasonable numbers for what would potentially become an open pit type of mine. We have run some pit shells around this internally and find that we have a relatively low strip ratio. So that would certainly enhance the economics or help the economics of something like this. The next project I'll talk about is Cerrito. Cerrito is located about 1.5 kilometers to the northeast of the town of Lavras de Sol. And we have, again, completed about 15,000 meters of drilling in 93 drill holes. We've drilled over a strike length of about 1.3 kilometers to a vertical distance of about 425 meters. We're finding that, again, gold occurs along these structures within these hydrothermally altered Monza granites. And this deposit also remains open at depth and along strike. In terms of the resource category, we have about 500,000 ounces at about 0.7 grams per ton gold. But again, this deposit sits right at surface. And so certainly, if we were to ultimately mine this, you know, the fact that it's near surface and at surface is certainly would help with the overall economics. In terms of what does this stuff look like, this is a typical example of the style of mineralization that we see at Lavras. Basically, we have these silicified rocks that have been completely altered. This musky colored mineral is a mineral called cerussite, which is a potassium silicate. And this kind of brick colored stuff is hematite. And this kind of metallic looking mineral, this bronzy looking mineral is pyrite. The gold is actually hosted in this bronzy looking pyrite material. In terms of our exploration program, as I mentioned, we're in the middle of a 12,000 meter drilling program. We've completed about 5,000 meters so far this year. One of the focuses is in this area called Matilje and Matilje Extension. This is a very interesting area. It's located about 3.5 kilometers or so south of the town of Lavras de Sol, right over here. And we have a very large soil anomaly that measures something like 3 kilometers east-west by about 2.5 to 3 kilometers in a kind of a northeast direction. What we're finding is the gold here is, again, structurally controlled, and certainly we're getting some very interesting results. So far, we've completed just over 9,000 meters in 32 holes. On the left-hand side, you can see the photograph, which again shows the style of mineralization. Again, we're seeing a lot of silicification with the gold basically being associated with this pyrite, this iron sulfide mineral. In terms of other minerals that we see things like hematite, and what we think is this is what we would call a phyllic sort of style of mineralization or alteration, but certainly a lot more work to be done and very promising. In terms of some of the specific results that we've released publicly, in the first hole that we drilled in 2020, we hit 62 meters of 0.62 grams per ton gold. But within that zone of mineralization, we've got some higher grade intervals, including 12.8 meters of 0.9 and 14 meters of 1.13. In the second hole that we drilled on this target, Matilje, we hit 145 meters of just under, well, about 0.7 grams per ton gold. And again, within that interval, we got some higher grade zones, including 92 meters of 0.9 and 9 meters of just over a gram, and then another section of 27 meters of just over a gram. What's really interesting is that in all of these gold systems, actually, that we've drilled so far, we find these sort of high-grade pockets where we see visible gold. And here's just an example of visible gold that we saw in the Matilje target, where we hit 0.6 meters of 31 grams per ton gold. That's basically an ounce per ton. And it was associated with this thing on the left we call a Lamprofere dike. And so one of the ways to think about the gold systems as we understand it so far at Lavras is that we've got this kind of cloud of lower grade mineralization, but then we've got these high grade sort of zones within that cloud. And so think of it like raisins in a bun sort of idea, where the raisins are the high grade components of the system. So we're optimistic that as we start to tighten up the drilling and understand this mineral system a little bit better, that will actually improve upon the grades that we've disclosed so far. But that's to be determined. At our Zeka-Souza target, we're drilling there as well. We've completed about just under 3,000 meters of drilling in 14 drill holes. We've drilled only to a vertical distance of 250 meters, so really quite shallow in the big scheme of things. Zeka-Souza is located about 1.5 kilometers or so north of Butia. Again, Butia is our most advanced project with 500,000 ounces. This green stuff here that we've outlined in the map is all the alteration that we're seeing in the rocks. So you can see there's a very large scale alteration system in this area. And certainly there's a lot more work to be done, but we think it's a very large gold system based on the geological evidence so far. So we hope to release the results of Zeka-Souza shortly. Also, we have another project called Candelaria, which is located about 1 kilometer to the east of Zeka-Souza. So far, there's been about 3,000 meters of drilling into this target, and we're potentially going to drill another 12 holes or so into it, just to try and understand it better. But what we found so far is a kind of an east-west structure that appears to be mineralized. Based on some of the historical drilling, the best hole was 36 meters of 1.42 grams per ton gold at 70 meters down the drill core, so maybe 50 meters below surface. So very encouraging and something that we're going to follow up on in the future. In terms of other work that we're doing on the property, in terms of regional exploration, we're actually completing a 3,400 line kilometer drone mag survey. What this map shows is the mag survey that we've completed so far. You can see these structures that are starting to show in the magnetics that are very important in terms of us understanding where we should be targeting our exploration work. The blue area shows where the drone has completed the survey so far. So up in the north part of the property and also in the southwest part of the property. This light shaded area is what remains to be completed. We hope that this will be completed in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll integrate all of this data together, and then we'll have a full picture of what the structural setting looks like at Lavras, which will be very helpful for our exploration targeting in the future. So just to sort of wrap things up a little bit here, we know that the exploration potential at Lavras, or at least we feel the exploration potential at Lavras, is extremely significant. It's very unusual to find a gold system of this size and scale, which hasn't been systematically explored and drilled off. Certainly if it was in Canada, it would have been drilled off by now. So we're very encouraged by the size and scale of the system. So far, the geological evidence is leading us to believe it's likely an alkaline gold system of some sort. Maybe it's some sort of hybrid in between. We're not quite sure yet, but that's kind of work in progress. We're starting with a good gold resource base. We have at least 1 million ounces in 2 of the known mineral occurrences. And as I've mentioned, we know about 23 of them so far. So it's really just a matter of getting to all of these other targets over time. And so we think we have a really nice opportunity here, and we hope to really realize that value over time through a systematic exploration program and drilling program. So with that, I'll just turn it over to questions and answers. Anne-Marie?
Thanks, Mike. So please go ahead and put your questions in the chat window of the platform, and I'll relay them. And we have our first question is there a mill nearby?
There's no mill, like modern day mill nearby. There are actually some historical old stamp mills from, I think, some British companies that worked there in the late 1800s, but they're not active anymore. So certainly the concept with Lavras, given the sort of regional scope of the mineral occurrences that we see, is that ultimately there would be some sort of a centralized milling facility, and that each of these deposits that we drill off and define would feed into that centralized mill. So for example, at Butia, we've got 500,000 ounces of potentially open pit material with a relatively low strip ratio. So that might be something you start with. Then there's Cerrito, which would be a similar sort of situation. And, hopefully what we hope to do, and this is obviously something to be determined, is to find a higher grade sort of starter pit. And, what's intriguing to me from a geologic perspective is that we are finding that this gold system definitely has some high grade areas in it. So the challenge for us is to find a mass of mineralization that's high grade, which could ultimately, start as a starter sort of pit for an overall operation. And then these things become these very long-lived kind of Energizer Bunny type of mining operations, and the lower grade material that you sort of see would certainly become economic once the infrastructure and the milling facilities are up and running. So, for example, if you were to look at Cripple Creek, which has been mining for over 100 years, I think the average grade that they're mining there is about 0.5 grams per ton gold. And it works. It works because the infrastructure is all in place. And so, we're hoping that we're sort of 100 years earlier than Cripple Creek, and we just need to systematically explore this property and see what we can come up with.
Thanks for the question. Just a reminder to add your questions to the chat function, to the chat window of the platform, so I can relay them. Mike, how many meters are you planning to go this year?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, we have a 12,000 meter drilling program underway this year. We've completed about 5,000 so far, so we have another 7,000 meters budgeted.
How much money will be invested in exploration in 2022, and how long can you explore without raising money or creating dilution?
So we have a budget of about $6 million for exploration this year. We're certainly well funded right through for the current program. In terms of raising money, one thing junior mining companies do well is spend money. So certainly we're cognizant of our spend rate, but we will have to raise money in the future, but not in the near term. How we do that, it depends really on our share price. We do have that royalty as well, which is certainly worth something. And so we'll look at our financing options when we need to. But for now, we're focused on creating good results, getting our share price higher, and taking it from there.
Thanks. And again, just a reminder to pop your questions in the chat window. Mike, I know this is a little bit asking you which is your favorite child, but is there a target that you're most excited about?
The whole project to me is extremely exciting because of the scale and nature of the mineralization. And we're really just starting to understand it. Is there a favorite target? I don't know that there's a favorite one. I think it's all, from a geological perspective, is fascinating geology. And like I said, there's some very high grade sort of hits that we're getting in the drilling that we're doing. And so for me, the key objective is to try and find out where we can find some of that really high grade stuff in a concentrated area so that we can, kickstart the overall economics of this whole project.
That's great. So I think that we've covered off all of our questions. So Mike, I'm just going to throw it back to you for a little summary, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Well, again, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our story. We think we have a very unique opportunity here in southern Brazil. We're happy that we've finally been able to focus on this project, consolidate all the ground, and sort of systematically explore these 23 known targets that we have. And we're starting with a good balance sheet. We're starting with a million ounces of gold resources, and we think we can grow it from here to create value for all stakeholders. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. If we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you offline. Have a great afternoon.